Good morning, traders and investors. Hope everyone is having a nice Thursday here, May 8th, 2025. Will the Trump bump hold? Got a few updates on trade today, a deal with the UK, also Trump easing chip export restrictions. Drug stocks last night absolutely slammed. A Politico report that we're going to talk about. Trump potentially pitching sweeping Medicare drug price plan. We're going to go over what happened with the Fed yesterday, a few earnings from last night to go over, including ARM Holdings, Applovin, Carvana. This morning we had Shopify. Tonight we're going to get Affirm. Maybe you want to take a little look at DraftKings. Might even talk about Momo names potentially coming back. We got a couple Momo names moving here this morning. Our guest at 8:35 a.m. Eastern Time, Angie Setzer, the grain goddess. Let's get it going, folks, here on Pre-Market Prep.
The volatility right now is really incredible.
Wow, look at that consolidation on the upper right chart.
You know what we've seen this earnings season? Some of these expected moves get even more violent. This is why I have switched my strategy 10 years ago. And if you're chasing, you're in trouble.
Christian Fromhertz, hope you're having a good week. How's your morning going?
Good morning. Well, we got a lot on the tape. We just had some headlines that just crossed the tape. We'll kind of just start with that, and then I'll go over where we are in terms of markets this morning. But EU proposes tariffs on 95 billion of U.S. goods if talks fail. EU mulls export curbs on 4.4 billion of scrap metals, chemicals. EU tariff proposal includes airplanes, cars, and bourbon. So they're kind of just getting ready in case trade talks don't go well. So we got some trade talks going well, some trade talks perhaps are just in case they're getting prepared. Let's go through some of the commodities this morning. First, we've got crude, which is up 2% this morning. Nat gas, bring up this quickly here. Nat gas is up 1% this morning. Gold this morning, backing off a little bit and almost like a double top here in gold. Very interesting, down about 0.7 of a percentage point. Got to those previous highs and backed off yesterday. Let's bring up silver as well. Silver futures are essentially flat right now. Bonds. Bring up bonds really quickly, down about 0.4 of a percentage point. Not, again, very quiet mover in the long end of the curve after not much of a movement yesterday with the Fed and not much of a movement this morning. And then here's your big mover this morning, the cryptos. Look at Bitcoin extending out of this consolidation higher, 2.9%. I also see Ethereum, which I'm not going to bring up. I'm going to go right to equities, but Ethereum is up about 9% this morning. That's one heck of a move there for Ethereum, and a lot of crypto stocks are moving this morning. You've got S&P futures. We're up right now about 1%. We're going to be coming back into that resistance. We've been seeing a lot of consolidation in the last couple of days. I'm really watching this level right around 57.55 for S&P futures. NASDAQ futures are up a bit more, up 1.2%. All that little consolidation in the last couple of days, we're getting back to where we were on Friday. A little bit of curb your enthusiasm there for you. Russell futures are up 1.3%, also getting back to where we were on Friday. So back to where we were. Good morning, guys. Dennis, how you doing?
Nice rundown, Christian. What's going on? Obviously, lots of macro headlines going on here. Maybe we should just start with the big one from last night. And obviously that was Trump when he takes to his Truth Social popping up. It was about 9:10 last night. Says we got a big trade deal to announce tomorrow. Big deal, big country, big deal, fully comprehensive deal. We later found out that it was indeed the UK. I think we get all the specific details on this presser, I believe, at 10 a.m. But, here we are, Christian. We get the pop on the first trade deal. You had said before and wondered if this was going to be a sell the rip opportunity if we get a trade deal announced. I want to know what your thoughts are now. Are you still in that camp?
No, I see prices higher, so I'm not in that kit. I mean,
That's
the
how I get
first,
too. I was like, if it ever goes down there, I'm going to buy it. And I was like, no, prices are lower. I don't know if I want to do it. No, I don't know. So yeah, I just want to get your thoughts, obviously, because you did say that about a week ago. You're getting this rip, so it's the opportunities there, Christian, here to sell the rip. What are your thoughts, for real?
well, I think what we will need to watch is whether we can get above those Friday highs. I mean, that's going to be very interesting to see that we're right back to where we were on those Friday highs. So I'm not sure I'm ready to fade this move this morning. We'll see what they say at 10 o'clock. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly we can't rally like this on every single. If there's going to be more deals,
Why
and
not?
there was speculation. Uh, I was reading Marco Kalanovich, a name that you haven't heard in a long time. He used to be the J.P. Morgan, big economist that everybody was listening to, and he's like, "There's no way that this can go on for every deal. The market would be up 300%."
That
So
sounds awesome.
so
Well, I
I
don't think it's
chuckled.
going to go up 70 points on the Penguin deal, though. So we'll have to knock that one off. So, well, but I mean, I think you're right. And I think I agree with Marco that you're going to get the first deal. It's going to be a big bump. Maybe the second deal gets a bump. And eventually they'll become numb to it as well. Not numb to it yet, though. And I mean, not even numb to talks. So here we are, up 60, 70 handles here. I mean, the S&Ps are back to where we were. Well, we're through. We're looking, well, not quite. 568.38. I'm going to do Joel's job back on just, 3 days ago here. So we're getting back up into that area. So there is a little bit of technical resistance overhead supply. Obviously, maybe the devil's in the details. Let's get the details of this deal and see what it's all about. But we have leaked a little bit off the overnight session highs.
Yeah,
Yep.
just a
Was the
little bit. But yeah, I would definitely watch those Friday highs. 10 o'clock announcement. Yeah, I mean, and that's the question. I mean, there was some speculation on what country it was going to be, and they kind of hinted. I saw that headline yesterday that they said that the U.S. and U.K. were like hammering out a deal. It was kind of. It was mentioned, or kind of, I don't want to say leaked, but it was mentioned that they were working on it. So it's probably going to be, if I had to speculate, next, I think they're getting close with India, but it will probably a bit of like diminishing returns until they kind of really. I think the big one's going to be China. So I think they can kind of maybe get close or get to the point where they're making some of these country by country deals, but China will be the big one, the tough one to crack.
The other news that broke right before the close at about 3:50, we got a report that Trump was going to back off on some of the chip tariffs overseas. And we saw Nvidia really rip on this. At the close, it went from 114 to 117. Obviously AMD, the SMH was trading 216, closed to 220. Now we get the UK deal. They're tacking on another 1%. So from 345 yesterday, the SMH was 216. Now we're talking up at 224. So it's a big bump here too. What are your thoughts here? Let's just talk chips here for a second. You go Nvidia, SMH, wherever you want to go, Mr. CF.
Yeah, I mean, so when the deal was announced, like I needed to kind of get my arms around the announcement of what they were doing with this it was a May 15th headline, so it's a little bit difficult to kind of understand what they did here with this. But basically, they're saying that I think, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but they're kind of renegotiating those foreign, you know, uh, the
It was
implications that
stuff
they
from
were
the
having.
Biden. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like something that was set with the last administration. So they're kind of going to rehash that and bring that back and maybe open up some of the some, like almost like not a trade deal, but whether or not they can export some of these chips. And it was a nice reaction with the semis yesterday, and then you got a nice follow through this morning. Particularly I did see a decent amount of Nvidia call buying. So that does get you to that does break you through the highs from yesterday. We're at 119 here this morning. Let me just back that up here on the daily chart. 119 will kind of get you closer to this 200-day moving average. We're going to be right around this previous pivot in here. So maybe at least getting out let's be somewhat positive, be positive here about the technicals and say at least we're getting out of the pattern of lower highs, because we have been in this pattern of lower highs since all the way the beginning of January. Here's the high, then there's a lower high here, lower high here, lower high here. So perhaps we're beginning to turn the corner here on Nvidia.
And then the third macro headline, so there was a bunch of them yesterday, came from a Politico article. And this Politico article came out just after the close at 4:15. And the title is Trump to Pitch Sweeping Medicare Drug Price Plan. And if we're going down, I just read you the first two paragraphs because I tell you what it's all about from Politico. President Donald Trump plans to revive an effort to dramatically slash drug costs by tying the amount the government pays for some medicines to lower prices abroad. Three people familiar with the matter told Politico. Trump early next week is expected to sign an executive order directing aides to pursue the initiative called Most Favored Nation for a selection of drugs within the Medicare program. The idea would use the administration's authorities to force prices down. There is speculation happening here that this could be the big announcement that Trump was teasing to bring drug prices down. There was three people that had sources on this. Two of them thought this was the big announcement. The third one did not know. So we don't know what Trump's big announcement was that he was talking about yesterday, I believe it was. But we've got a couple people that believe that this is it. So trying to force drug prices down. This is obviously very bad for your drug makers, especially your big pharma. And last night, it was a pharma wreck. XLV at one point in time, if you want to bring that up, Christian, trade all the way down to in the 132 handle. So we're talking about a 2.5 point fall again after, you know, the XLV got hit the other day as well. You had stocks like Bristol Myers trading down $1.50. Merck was trading down $1.50. You had Lilly trading down 20 points last night. It's still down 10. So all these drug stocks are still down on this. They have bounced with the overall market from those lows, but they're still down on this. So just keep in mind, if you're trading the drugs, there is an article floating around and it's not getting a lot of, major media because the UK took all that thunder. But, this is a thing that can move prices for the drug stocks down here today. And if this is the big announcement, I mean, this is, nervousness for people who are hiding in pharma.
Well, yeah, you bring up a good point. I mean, he mentioned an announcement, and he also said that it won't be trade related. So I would have to I would have to think that this is it.
I
But
think it's that.
you've got a plethora of new announcements that are kind of coming at you, and they kind of overshadowed what we had yesterday, which was a Fed day yesterday. So, by the way, so before we get to the Fed, I just wanted to mention the technicals in XLV. So down again, this has been such a difficult group.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up the biotech chart next because that has not been that's
awful,
pretty ugly as well. But I would say at least for XLV, as bad as this, because there's been a lot of bad news in this group that's been coming out, and earnings wise too. But this did not take out the pivot from April 21st. So even though underperforming this morning, underperforming in a strong tape, and it is a risk on type tape this morning, it's still holding above those lows from that date, as well as all the way back here from the 9th as well. So you've got some support. The question is, does this group really do much here? And I'm just going to bring up the biotech chart in here too. This really got slammed. This was going back to Tuesday, where just rising up a little bit, and then a big slam down here. And let's see where this is.
It was on that higher, that
yes,
new FDA hire. I'm getting his name wrong. Was it Zarte? Can't remember his name. Getting the name wrong, but Chad will correct us on that.
Yeah, there's been a couple, different bad headlines right now for biotech as well as healthcare, And even like, a company like VRTX reported, which is a big company in the space. So it's also a little bit of earnings too. Look at VRTX really get slammed down the other day on earnings. And
Yeah.
this has been a strong name. So again, coming back to like this name was kind of hanging out at those previous highs and got slammed down, which we know is
They
going to be trend.
absolutely hate this sector. The valuations in this sector, like I was saying it in the STN room yesterday, I think if you've got a 5 or 10 year time horizon, there's so much washout in this sector that I think you'd probably be happy. But with, announcements coming, like they're trying to cut drug prices, none of this is good news in the short term. So short term headwinds everywhere for this sector. Long term, I think we're still going to be fine with the drug companies, and the valuations are as cheap on some of these as I've ever seen. Like, I mean, you're getting Merck down to like 9 times earnings now. It's been a long time since they've been down here. But I'm not really jumping in yet because it's just so much, seems like more bad news every day. So,
Right.
And the sector is completely out of favor. To your point, nothing great happens under the 200-day moving average. Well, nothing great happens when you're making new 52-week lows either. So we're significantly under the 200-day moving average on most of these stocks. I don't know what turns it around in pharma, but man, this group might be the most hated group in the entire market.
Agreed. Let's get to Mr. Powell. Again, being a little bit overshadowed yesterday, but he comes out yesterday, and nothing really new. For a whole press conference, and the press conference usually goes on for about 50 to 55 minutes. I think he cut it short. The big phrase that came out was not transitory, but did you notice, Dennis, what his big phrase was yesterday?
You teased it in the pre-market show, Christian, so you might as well say it, so I don't want to steal your thunder here, but it was interesting.
That's fine. That's fine. Hey, this is Powell's thunder. His big phrase was wait and see. I believe he said wait and see 14 or 15 times during that press conference yesterday. Really
Nothing says pause like wait and see. He's spelling out. He didn't say pause. It's wait and see, but that says pause. It's telling me maybe we should look at those Fed futures, Christian. But at one point in time, there was like an 80 or 90% chance they were cutting in June. Where is that now?
Well, that's amazing. And by the way, if you're looking for an honorable mention was uncertainty. He also mentioned that word quite a bit. But yeah, to your point, absolutely. About a month ago, they were pricing in for June about an 80% chance that the Fed was going to cut rates on the June 18th meeting. When we got into the announcement yesterday, there was about a 30% chance that they were going to cut. After the press conference, that probability in Fed fund futures dropped to 20%. This morning, it's all the way down to 17% this morning. So really, the stage maybe is set, maybe not for the June meeting, but now the next meeting after that is now July 30th, and that has a 75% chance. Now, that lines up. When does this the 90-day tariff, what do they call it? Delay, exemption? Do you know?
I think it's July 3rd if we did the math right. So right day before Independence Day is what they were chatting about, in the STN room and also on Twitter. I saw that. So I think it actually is a day before Independence Day. The 90-day kick the can down the road. That's when that expires.
So maybe the wait and see and all the uncertainty, once we get to July, that's where the Fed fund futures are looking at the first cut. But barring, clearly we're going to hear about more negotiations and, whether more deals are going to happen, not going to happen, the probability of them happening, trade talks going well, before all then. So in any event, it was, kind of not a big mover, I would say, for the overall market. We were leaning lower a little bit. Very choppy until the announcement came out about the semis yesterday.
Well, speaking of semis and speaking of chips, let's jump into our first earnings report here, and that is ARM Holdings. They reported last night just after the bell, and the expected move was just over $10. It is actually down exactly the expected move right now. We'll say exactly $9.74. It's not to the penny, but it's pretty darn close. We've bounced off the overnight lows again, probably the UK helping that. But ARM is down. It did actually pressure Nvidia down. Nvidia was trading down about 75 cents last night, before obviously the entire market gets bailed out with the UK stuff here. But just quick technicals on ARM Holdings, Christian.
Yeah, technicals. We moved down all the way down to sub 110, so right in the 109 handle. Trying to make a bit of a higher low here than last week, so that has it for it. But that's a small positive if you want to take away there. And talk about like a better day to report earnings. Perhaps if the news wasn't so positive overall for the tape, this stock might be down more
Yeah.
because they did mention that their outlook, very weak outlook, stokes slowdown fears. And there's a lot of analysts this morning that are slashing price targets. I see JP Morgan brings down their price target to 150. Morgan Stanley, still overweight ratings for both these brokers. Citigroup still has a buy on it, but drops from 200 to 170. So slashing price targets across the board for most brokers.
I got to give some color on this too, on the slashing of price targets, because it is ridiculously analysts feel like animals, lemmings, chasing price here this morning. Freudian slip. ARM lowered price target to $95. That's the lowest one down there, I think. Raymond James lowers price target to 140. B of A lowers price target to 135. Barclays lowers price target to 150. JP Morgan lowers price target to 150. We got Mizuho lowers price target to 160. KeyBank lowers prices to 175. Rosenblatt Street High, I believe, lowers price target to 180. Guggenheim lowers price target to 147. They all chase price. I mean, help us out here, analysts. I love a contrarian call, but when you just jump in, the stock's down now, I better lower my price target so I don't look so dumb. I mean, just drives me bananas.
And by the way, I was just going to throw in here, it wasn't so much about the current quarter numbers. They were fine. Like they beat for the most part. It was the guidance. They see next quarter 30 cents to 38 cents. The consensus was 42. So they just brought down their guidance on borrowing from Mr. Powell uncertainty, but they're not going to wait and see. They slashed their guidance right away.
Let's go to the another big one from last
jokes.
night, which is Applovin. And can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
Applovin last night, APP. This was interesting because we were in the STN room and we're talking it live, and it tanks like $30. And I'm like, oh, it's out. I'm like, it's out because the stock just fell 30 points. It went from 303 down to like 275. You'll see that dip, Christian, on the chart. And then Brent's like, it's not out. I'm like, really? I'm like, he's like, it's not out. I'm like, well, what the hell? I'm like, it just fell 30 points. And then it starts bouncing up and it's coming back. I'm like, yeah, it is. It's bouncing back. And then about a minute later, it comes out and it's a beat. And they come out with the earnings. $1.67 versus $1.45, $1.48 billion versus $1.38 billion. I know Mary had a nice trade on in the chat. Congrats, Mary. Wow. So we dropped $30 on no report. Somebody just got nervous and just hammered it. And then it rallies basically 80 from the low, or up, 50 up to the expected move, which was $55. So it's trading up 40 here right now, but it was a wild action there and shocking to drop 30 points like a minute before the report. And kudos to Brent, telling me it's not out, because when you see something drop 30, like, oh, it's out. Wasn't out. So Applovin popping. Christian, technicals, I know 350 some resistance. Are you getting down and dirty? Any thoughts here?
Like you got a nice, this is a nice pop. This is one of the biggest gainers here this morning. And it is back into where we were going all the way back to March. So, this stock has been kind of, hanging out like almost like a bowl type shape. It's gone a little bit lower. It even went lower. If you go back to last week, it dipped pretty decently all the way down to 239, but kind of like a rubber band type move, stretched and moved back up. What I find, so I would watch the recent highs of this March 25th date. I'm just going to switch the chart here to the daily chart, but we're like right into here. So that's a nice level to kind of watch. that's what I would be watching, is this 345 level as well. That is really what I would watch for the day. And if we can climb above that, then I see 378 coming in. I was just going to mention one more note about this. Just shows to me like how difficult this market is. Muddy Waters came out just yesterday, and they doubled down on their short thesis for app. They said before they wanted to get this out before that they reported earnings. They doubled down saying that this is a short. They are a short company, but they just came out and try to like stoke this a bit and say, hey, we're definitely we're reiterating our call to be short this name.
That wasn't a greatest call in the world by Muddy Waters. They made some good calls in the past, but maybe not that one with the big 40-point pop. Carvana, another widely followed retail name. And again, we're seeing, some huge volatility on these earnings. And we are seeing this buy the dip mentality come in here as well. I'll give you the numbers for Carvana. They beat big time, $1.51 versus 60 cents. Like, wow, 4.23 billion versus 3.98 billion. But it's kind of a head scratcher because on that big beat, they hammered the stock. This stock at one point in time, and I can't see your numbers on your chart, Christian, but you may be able to tell me how low it got. I saw it down 10. How low did we get last night?
Oh, last night, gotcha.
Yeah, sorry, last night.
Last night. I mean, these things are kind of coming right down to like some technical support on that initial move. Applovin did the same thing. 234 was where it kind of breached, went a little bit south of that, but yeah, some of these initial reactions are completely the wrong way.
Head scratcher. Like they hammer it, and it was a decent report, and then they just bought it right back. So I mean, if you're sitting out there, 25 points it went down last night, and now it's up 13. So you're talking about up 40 from where it was trading after hours on a decent report. Like, I mean, I don't know what these news algos, I joke that when they get SERP and they get all antsy in their pantsy, but they just are dead wrong sometimes. Even on the Applovin, like who's hitting that? Maybe it was just one institution that just said, I got to get out of this. Oh my gosh, it's going to report. I better get out of this. I better sell 30 points down ahead of the report when the expected move is 50. I mean, I don't understand some of these moves that are just completely seem the wrong direction. On a good report, they hammered and then they bought it right back.
Yeah, and I don't get this one at all, the initial reaction, because they said that, the numbers were very good. 4.28 billion versus 3.98, and it does seem like this is also a stock for this environment too. Buying used cars, a little bit more of where investors could be buying, instead of new cars, used cars in this environment where there's a lot of uncertainty, borrowing that from Mr. Powell yesterday. But seems like a logical type play in this market. But I agree. Head scratcher move. Could we just switch real quick to an international name too that also reported that's up big? We can cover two international names.
Sure.
We'll do the good first, and then we'll do the bad second. But how about this Melly? This is another good beat by an international company, International Tech, which has been very strong. Melly was just kind of sitting up here. It did nicely come off the highs, which has been better for companies going into earnings. But I could give you the numbers here in just a second. But hey, we've got a name that appears to be breaking out to new highs. We don't have too many in the tech sector that are breaking out to new highs where there's no resistance.
Yeah, new all-time high here for MELI. They did report and beat, and this is a company that's just been firing on all cylinders for a very long time. I mean, when you go out to the monthlies, this thing was $600 back in 2022. It's $2,450 here now. So you're talking about a stock that's up like 400% in the last 3 years. So it's been moving and been unbelievable. $9.74 versus $8.03. 5.93 billion versus 5.51 billion. So nice beat on the top, nice beat on the bottom. And they can't stop buying it here this morning, buying it up to all-time highs. I mean, we give you resistance, but there is no resistance. Blue skies above, new all-time highs. Not very many stocks doing that.
So check out these numbers. First quarter net revenue, 5.9 billion versus 5.5 billion. The EPS 9.74, estimated 839.
Huge.
Gross merchandise volume 13.3 billion versus 13 billion. Payment volume 58 billion versus estimated 52. They smashed some of these numbers. I see an adjective being describing their results as stellar. Very, very good results. pretty impressive. Argentina company. And, you know, another one of those companies that's kind of like it's the Amazon of Argentina. Very, very impressive move out to new highs. So that's the good in international. Do we want to do the bad next?
Yeah, the good, the bad, and the ugly, sure. I'll be the ugly. Shopify.
Shopify.
It is not good. We could call it international. It's Canadian, so I guess that's international here. 94.50 is where she went out. I'll give you the numbers, and it is a miss. And when you know you're trading with nosebleed valuations, which Shopify has come down a lot from where it was, but still pretty nosebleed, you got to blow it away. 25 cents versus 26 cents. That's a miss on the bottom line. Top line slight beat, 2.36 billion versus 2.33 billion. Q2 sales kind of guide higher at 2.53 to 2.57 billion versus estimates of 2.5 billion, but it's the slightest guide higher. So they are hitting it down. It's right near the lows actually too. They were trying to buy the dip there just about 20 minutes ago, but it's come back down to those lows now. Stock looks a great support down in the lower 80s. I don't know if you're going to get there here today. I want to get your thoughts here on Christian. Is this a dip you'd be interested in buying on Shop?
Well, that's a great question. So I'm gonna stall here for a second with the buy the dip, and I'm gonna give you the weekly jobless numbers.
Jobless
It's
claims.
a tape. We've got initial jobless claims 228 versus 230 estimate. So pretty close to being on the screws. You also get non-farm productivity comes in right in line, negative 0.8%. Continuing claims, pretty close to on the screws, 1879 versus 1895. So a little bit, continuous claims, a little bit less than expected. So remember last week, the number was a little bit higher than expected for those initial jobless claims. Today, very muted, and we'll just take a look at futures really quickly. Not that much of a move here this morning. So this weekly number doesn't get things to move that much. I see bonds dipping a little bit on that number. So question about Shopify. Is this a buy the dip? I kind of think it is. The numbers were not bad. I mean, they didn't miss by a lot. I was just going through the numbers as you were mentioning that, you know, maybe the problem was that the expectations were a little bit too high. I do see some support right around 83.90. It's not far from that. Yeah, I would say disappointing for this, but I think maybe an overreaction. I would be a buy the dip, or very close to it.
I would
would
too.
Yeah.
What was the expected move? Do you know what the expected move is here?
I don't. I'm
going to go find it out quickly because this is one I'm actually interested in trading. Obviously Canadian. Shopify though is a darling here, and the report wasn't that bad. So it's one that the bar was probably a little bit too high. Like I don't like buying the dips, and the reports are flat out bad and they're lowering guidance. But this report wasn't that bad. It's just a matter of the bar was too high. It was indeed a little bit more than we're trading now. It was about $10.50. So that would bring us down to like 83, 84. So think about that. And again, you know, we've had CC Legator obviously on Stock Trader Network and on PreMarket Prep a whole pile of times. He comes on every Friday on the Stock Trader Network. But I mean, you know, he always like goes like this with the bands. And, you know, the majority of the time the stocks stay within the expected range band. That lower band for this would be around $84. So it's at 86.5 now. So that's probably, you know, my initial support is that we're looking where that expected move is. 2 minutes here. We're going to go to Angie. We got a couple more stocks here. I know, Christian, you wanted to cover a couple smaller names here, and I think it's a good idea. Sezzle. And I don't know anything about Sezzle, but I do know it's one of the biggest movers up here on the day, and I do know the earnings reports, which I can give you as well. This reported last night, and the earnings were really good. They made $1, and they were only expected to make 20 cents. So this is up huge. They also had $104 million in sales. Yeah, only million. Versus 64 million. They're looking at 2025. They're raising their EPS guidance. They were supposed to make only $1.29 for the entire year, but they're bopping it to 221 versus to 325. So this is a huge bump, folks. This is a huge bump in, you know, guidance. It's making that multiple look a lot better. So the stock is up 35% here this morning. SE Zebra L. Christian, thoughts?
All right, I'll ask the chat really quickly. What does this company do? Anybody know what this company does?
I did not know until I went and looked it up.
All right. Well, I know we got a guest coming on, but I don't see
We
any
got a minute.
responses. But they are. Give, give 3 more seconds on this. Yeah, there you go. Jim points it out. BNPL, buy now, pay later. So really, an interesting. It's a smaller company than a company that's going to report after the close today, which is also very much in that segment. But buy now, pay later. So very strong to see that. That's buy now pay later working pretty well and good demand for that type of product. So it also, like, if you believe that we're going to have more of a, like, if there's more of a possibility of a recession, perhaps people are using this to continue their spending. So I
Yeah.
think a firm is going to set up very interesting for earnings after the close today.
I think so too. I like the Affirm setup. I like it for a number of reasons. One, we're still significantly off the February high, which was $80. We're talking about a stock that went out at 51, 54. I know it's up this morning on the back of these Setzer earnings and the UK deal. It's trading at 53.90 here right now. But I also like the Upstart. Upstart was a weak report. They did buy the dip in that. And then it kind of sets up, because Upstart and Affirm always kind of trade together. It kind of lowers the bar to a certain extent for Affirm as well. So I love the Affirm setup of potentially being long into earnings. I haven't decided if I'm going to take it long into earnings yet, but you think you are, Christian? You think you're going to take this through earnings?
I
Affirm?
did. I bit the bullet and bought some pre-market. I just have a good feeling about it, but I hate having to chase in this market. But I did buy some here at 53.50 pre-market to kind of get started.
Expected move is about $7 on Affirm. So expected move is about $7. It's going to report tonight. We do have our guest in the background here. Oh, she just got up, though. We can see in the background. She just got off her chair, but she'll be coming back here in a second. She's just closing her door. So we're going to go and get to our guest here right now. Let's bring that intro. It's the goddess of grain,
Hi,
Angie
everybody. Good
Setzer.
morning.
We have no
Yes,
Joel
hi.
here today, and Joel is always disappointed if you're on and he's not. So you know what, though? His loss, our gain. We've got Angie here. Gonna talk some grain. Gonna talk some stocks. What's going on, Angie? What's up?
So, not much. Honestly, I don't know. You asked what we wanted to talk about. I'm like, there isn't anything to talk about. What do you mean? It's just trade all the time. I feel like if I step away from the desk for more than 5 minutes, I'm going to miss something. And I had forgotten about that with the first Trump administration. I don't know how many of you, I know you guys were around for the first go around for sure, because that's when I was on the show throughout. But yeah, just waiting for any sort of trade deal. We're riding the wave of emotion in grains. We go from, oh my gosh, a lot of folks say we're never going to export anything ever again, to what if we create phase 2 with China? And so we just basically kind of get to roll on this pendulum for now and hold our breath as we wait to see, what comes out of the administration.
Well, let's talk, those tariffs and uncertainties here. I mean, how is the grain and the soybeans? What are you looking at here, as obviously tariffs, are still uncertain for anything?
Yeah.
Like, we just don't know where we're going here.
Well, one of the biggest things, that we're watching currently is just more in the way of the physical trade and what is actually happening at ground level. And recognizing some of the truths that are only really kind of known if you're immersed in commodity trade or agricultural commodity trade. There's a few different things out there, like fallacies, or, folks are kind of adding drama, if you will, to the situation when it comes to like China cutting off U.S. imports of soybeans and things like that. It's a very seasonal thing. And so one of the things that I wanted to kind of come in and discuss is the way that, we have ebb and flows. We have different sort of market setups throughout the year in grains. And one of the biggest things is, folks are kind of like, oh my gosh, China is not taking in any U.S. soybeans currently, or they've cut off, their purchases of U.S. soybeans. It's a very seasonal thing. You don't see China really import a bunch of beans from the US after about March. The Brazilian soybean harvest begins. They take over our market share. But once you get out into like August and things like that, it's super important to recognize that the US remains competitive when it comes to soybeans into the world market. And if we were to see a continuation of trade issue with China, market share wise, Brazil could cover China's imports, but that would leave the rest of the world looking to source soybeans. And the US, really is a cheap option with high quality once we get back into new crop. And so it's one of those things where you're fighting reality versus speculation versus, obvious concern after the last trade war and all of these other things. But we're in a very different market than what we were in 2018.
Let's talk new crop outlook here. You've got Monday USDA report coming out here. What are your thoughts on the new crop outlook?
Well, I think, we've heard a lot of conversation about burdensome supplies and these big yields and things like that. And Monday's going to confirm that. You're going to have the USDA put in place their, basically or report or estimate record yields when it comes down to it. Soybean yield's going to be a record. The corn yield would be a record. And so it's one of those things in the industry we kind of fight against or argue over really when it comes down to it, is how do you start a year with a yield projection that has never been achieved? That feels pretty lofty. And one of those things that just doesn't necessarily make sense to a lot of folks. We have seen tremendous growth in yield potential for commodities, but one of those things is that we tend to run into some weather issues and all of that other stuff. And so coming into Monday, trade average estimate is to see some pretty steep cuts or at least some reductions versus the February 4 numbers in demand. And so what that'll do is the production number is very unlikely to change. It usually doesn't. We get the acreage number from the USDA there at the end of March. We'll get the yield number during the forum. And so really when it comes down to it, you're probably going to see large carryout numbers on Monday from the USDA. But that's one of the things that the market is genuinely expecting. And so the question comes into play, do you see it, on the flip side? We always talk about buying the rumor and selling the fact, but do we sell the rumor and buy the fact in this instance where it's like, okay, hold on a minute, this is probably going to be the highest carryout number we see projected, because reality is we're going to see some trimming of yields. We are going to see some shifts in demand. It's unlikely to see exports go to zero. Like everyone wants to talk about ag exports going to zero. They're not going to. Like our stuff still has value in the world market structure. People still want to buy our products, even if we're tit for tat trade or even if we're just assessing tariffs without cause. It's one of those things where the trade issues that you have or the trade issues that we're worried about are really not going to affect the balance sheet too awful much, or shouldn't when all is said and done. But it is going to be interesting to see Monday and see where the USDA puts demand with all of the trade uncertainty at hand.
Just want to break in with the breaking, moving away from Angie just for a second. US, UK, Christian Fromhertz bringing us from CNN. US-UK trade pact will leave 10% US tariff in place. So we are starting to get some more color on this UK deal here right now. That is why the S&P futures just dipped 10 points here at this point in time. We're still just getting color here. Obviously, we don't have all the details of it, but it does indeed look like the tariffs aren't going to be scrapped. It looks like we're going back to that 10% original tariff in place, and we are dipping a little bit here on that. Christian, you wanted to follow up here on a question as well.
Yeah. Hey, Angie. Just a question too. I mean, obviously there's a lot of implications. It's got to make this analysis tough in your world. But what about with, the possible deal with, we've heard a lot about like a possible like rare earths deal with Ukraine. We haven't heard too much about agriculture. Is that still an issue over there, or is everything like in terms of exports like flowing as it should, or does there need to be like a deal between Russia and Ukraine for that to have implications?
No, you're seeing relatively decent, reasonable grain movement. We have seen a reduction in flow of grain out of Ukraine here over the last couple of months, but that's more of a factor of a reduction in production last year. They experienced some pretty extreme dryness and heat throughout the year. And so they had a much smaller corn crop, much smaller, oil seed crop, less wheat available into the world market. And so you've seen a bit of a slowdown. In all honesty, there was a talk of a return to the Black Sea Grain Initiative initially with the talks between the US, Russia, and Ukraine. That would be the worst thing for Ukraine. A lot of folks think, oh, the BGSI was super awesome. It was one of those things that allowed for exports, which it did at the time. I'm not sure we would have seen the safe transit of bulk carriers throughout the Black Sea had we not had it initially, where it called for Russian inspections of ships and things like that. If you put Russia back in control of the Black Sea Grain Initiative, or if you were to have an official trade deal or official shipping deal between Russia and Ukraine, I think it would actually really have severe implications or reduction for Ukraine. Russia likes to have that control. It's been one of the things that they've pushed for. It's unnecessary. Ukraine's basically created its own trade corridor. It kind of hugs the sea line there for it and is able to be covered by a lot of the air defense systems and things like that. And in all honesty, Russia knows they don't want to open that can of worms. There's been kind of a quiet conversation, I think, in the background where it's like, you don't touch food exports and we won't touch your food exports. The thing that I think is most interesting about this as we move forward is what you just talked about. The U.S. now has an economic interest in Ukraine. Like, that's a totally different scenario than when it didn't before. What does that mean for how we approach, Russia's attacks on the region and some of these other things? I think the relationship that President Trump has had with Putin and some of these conversations that we have about, oh, he's, whatever, you insert whatever you want to say about Trump and Russia here. I think that is part of why he has been a little bit more gentle with Putin potentially, but I think you are seeing a shift from the administration. And so for me now, the biggest thing that I would watch is, wheat prices fall to a multi-year low. You've got crude prices falling off. Like, the world doesn't need the Russian supply of grain or oil at this point in time. And I'm not an oil trading expert. I'm just saying it's sort of the same sort of scenario in grain as it is in energies. We have adequate supply just about everywhere. So the thing that I'm watching now is if Russia, do we see Russia kind of get more pressure from the administration? You have Senator Graham pushing these sanctions on oil. Does it include Russian grain? Does it limit their ability to really kind of process some of these transactions? And then you have the whole entire sort of geopolitical, not only Ukraine and Russia, but you have the Pakistan-India situation. You have Xi in Russia right now looking to cement additional trade deals or no limit partnership with Russia. What does that mean for U.S.-China trade talks? It's just one of these things that are multi-layered and multifaceted. But from an overall standpoint, I believe at this point, unless you see some type of U.S. sanction on Russian grain movement or something that limits their ability to ship it, you aren't going to see much of a disruption. And if anything, now that the U.S. has that interest economically in Ukraine, you're going to see some safe transit, I would imagine, or at least the idea that that's protected.
Angie, let's jump into some specific stocks here because we see Intrepid Potash blasting off, Mosaic. I mean, is that, close, if not close to 52-week highs? If not, yeah, it is. It's getting close to 52-week highs here now. I mean, Potash done really well here. Thoughts, does this continue? What are your thoughts of Potash stocks?
Yeah, I think you'll probably see some continued increases in value there. It's not necessarily my wheelhouse, so definitely don't take this and run with it. But I will say, there are these ideas here that you'll continue to see limited nitrogen exports, or you could see some problems, just exactly what I was talking about there with Russia. If we limit flow out of Russia, they are a major exporter of fertilizer. China is a major exporter of fertilizer. They've cut off that flow over the last couple of years. You're really seeing a surge in demand as well, spring demand. And then you've seen a surge in wholesale prices, just simply because we have some tightening of supply. Margins are really solid. You're not seeing anyone come in and become a new fertilizer producer. That entire industry has been consolidated to the point of where you are going to see Mosaic and Potash and all, the handful of others out there. I don't even think there's more than 5 total anymore, at least in North America. You're going to see that support come into play because their margins are going to, they're going to be protected, first of all, because they provide and produce a vital ingredient that we need. You can't produce a crop without nitrogen, plain and simple. And so there's a lot of talk that we're going to have a big increase in corn acres. There's a lot of talk of really positive margins. There's tight global supply. It's one of those things that really kind of supports the entire setup in the fertilizer industry. And I'm not going to say like maintaining 52-week highs is something you're necessarily going to see, but I do believe you'll see it, remain reasonably elevated history just based on that fact.
That's Angie Setzer, the goddess of grain, giving us our agriculture outlook here. Angie, we'll get you back on next month. We love hearing from you.
Well, thank you. I enjoy being on, so just let me know and I'll be here.
We'll make sure Joel's on with you next time there because Joel loves interviewing. Thanks so much, Angie.
Thank you. Have a good one, guys.
Thank you, Angie.
We wanted to move and just cover Google from yesterday because this was a significant move. We'll get back to earnings in a second, but this was the headline, intraday headline of all headlines yesterday. And the rumors, and I think it's just rumors still, is that Apple is coming to pee in their pool a little bit with adding potential search into some of their products. So we've known for a while, and I have talked about Google on this show in the STN room multiple times. People keep asking me about this stock and saying, Dennis, Google, you look at the valuation, it's one of the cheapest of the Magnificent Seven. It's, trading, and I give you the PE here right now, just looking, is 16 times forward earnings now. They're like, how can you go wrong with Google? And I'm like, I'll tell you how we can go wrong. It's 54%, because we did, some extensive research on this. 54% of their revenue comes from search. Search is under attack. This is another place where search is under attack from Apple. But we know the chatbots are eating their lunch. We know, obviously, AI, and they're trying, to do, and they have their own AI product, which I use, and it seems pretty good. But again, the money they're making from that is not touching, their cash cow of search. So their cash cow is under attack. Yes, they have Waymo. Yes, they have other products. Yes, Google's going to be a big part of AI as well. But you're still looking at the core business is a search company, and search is under attack. That's why it's trading with a multiple of 16. That's why it's very close to its April lows. That's why I think I continue to stay away from this name, just because it's cheap. It's cheap for a reason.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. Lauren in the chat also says cheap for a reason. Just because the stock looks cheaper than its peers, it doesn't always mean that it's a particularly good thing. I thought, going back to what we saw on earnings, where the stock popped and just had no follow through. To me, it just didn't seem like the stock has any like major catalysts. That, I'm not to say that Google doesn't have catalysts. They're also working on a quantum chip as well. But are these things really going to move the needle? Dennis, great point about how much search affects their bottom line and how much revenue. So you take away search and it's just not the same company. I shouldn't say take away search, but to a lesser extent, if people are moving away, pivoting away from search, very difficult. It did bounce on some support, 148.60. That's a level that I would be watching. So as violent as that move was yesterday, it didn't really breach support. It came down to support and held. Again, that level is 148.60. So that's what I would be watching for the stock.
Let's jump back to earnings. There was a couple more that I just wanted to cover here quickly. I know you had this one on your radar too. Let's cover a small company that nobody's heard of again. We're doing a few smaller ones here today. And this is Dave. And I remember Kids in the Hall, and they had this song, "These are the Daves I know, I know, I know. These are the Daves I know." I don't know this Dave. So tell me about DAVE, the company here. It's up 27% this morning, and I don't think I've ever made a trade in this one.
Yeah, I think this is more in terms of like a fintech type name. They had earnings this morning, and they're jumping 20% on earnings. I mean, that's a big move. Let's just go through their numbers really quick. Their EPS, adjusted EPS, 248 versus 79 cents estimate. So that's a really big beat there. Sales, more so, I think, in line, 108 million versus, and that was 100 million was their estimate. So a little bit better there, not quite as much as the EPS. Their guidance also looks like it moves up. from estimates to 415 to 435 to 460 to 475. So, good numbers good numbers there. So, these little like niche companies are doing pretty well. And I know that we covered last week, the difference between some of these newer fintech companies that are coming in versus PayPal and Square or XYZ, whatever you call that, Block, I guess now. But it seems like these companies are coming in, and they've got they've got some edge to them. Where they're doing better, whereas some of the older ones, and it's not like PayPal is that old, but they're kind of struggling a little bit. So real nice move up to 136. Let's just look at the daily chart for some resistance. Next resistance that I would see up, sorry, let me just get my charts focused here, would be 152. And again, you can see this is a newer type company. So this IPO'd, I think, right in the middle of 2022. So has based for a while and is now coming back up. 152 would be the next upside level I see for the stock.
I want to preview a few earnings here tonight. If you've got any, so there was like literally 250 companies reporting here today. Chat, if you want to cover any earnings report specifically here, let us know. One more that was on my radar from last night, which we didn't get to, was Axon Enterprises, AXON. It's the old taser. This is another stock that has just been unbelievably resilient. I know it had the 700 to 500 down move in February, but that dip was bought. Axon did report last night a $1.41 versus a $1.27, 603 million versus 583 million. So a beat on the top, a beat on the bottom. They raised 2025 sales guidance, so you got the beat raise going on here. Stock is up 6% here this morning. You're not quite back to all-time highs, but you're not that far either. We're within 10% of all-time highs. So it's been a pretty good stock here. Axon, any thoughts here, Mr. CF?
Yeah, I remember when this stock sold off. I didn't understand what was going on. This was back.
What was the reason for that?
I never found the reason for it. It was the middle of February where the stock was breaking out, and the stock with the overall market started to sell off. But it got hammered more than anything else, and I never really found the reason for why it got smoked like that. But again, like it had a good earnings report after that sell off, and it just didn't have any follow through because of the market conditions. But I think that this is a good company, and I think that the company continues to have good earnings. They continue to beat their estimates. So I'm not in this name, but I kind of want to be personally, so maybe for more of a long term trade.
I've always wanted to be in it too, and it's one that I've just stayed away from for a long time. Pablo in the chat wants to talk IONQ. I kind of do too. We haven't talked to quantum stocks in a while, and this is one that has been a consolidation station here for the better part of April. I mean, yeah, we were down at 20, but the last part, we were $30 back 2 weeks ago, and we're still like, won't go at $29 here today. So we're consolidating right around, the top end of the April range here. Now we're breaking out here with IONQ, and I believe we do have numbers for you as well. So IONQ reported they beat earnings, have been called a beat. They lost 14 cents, supposed to lose 23, 7.57 million versus 7.51 million. Yes, I said 7 million, not 7 billion. So very small sales. They are affirming guidance. They're seeing 75 to 95 million, and analyst estimates were 85. So literally you're here, and they went here with the bars. So they put it right there. So that's a full affirm, which isn't a raise. It's just affirming guidance here. The market cap on this puppy is 7 billion. So I've always kind of been blown away that something can trade 140 times sales. But I guess, they feel like there's, the future here with quantum computing. Other stocks that are trading up as well. If you want to look at the little ones, RGTI, Rigetti, there's QBTS is another one. It's up huge. A QBTS report, that's like up 28% here this morning. I don't know if that one reported or not. Oh, yeah, it did. They beat as well. But again, these companies, 15 million in sales, not billion, million in sales. And it's got a $2 billion market cap. So it's trading 150 times sales, not earnings. It's trading 150 times sales. Stocks are nosebleed valuations, but the story is still there and the story is intact. What are your thoughts here on the quantum computing sector, Christian?
Yeah, well, do you think that the what really is important for these companies is like what they're doing in the future? It almost reminds me a little bit of like biotech. Biotech whenever they come out with if it's a smaller biotech company, when they come out with a new drug, the stock pops. And it's not so much about like their earnings. I kind of feel like this is the same thing with these quantum stocks because we know that the quantum is several years away, right? We've heard Jensen from Nvidia talk about how that there's a long runway for quantum. So I don't. So it's good that they're. I think it's a positive that they're reporting earnings that are better than expectations. But I really think it's like the future. And I think that you kind of have to believe that in quantum computing for the long term to kind of be positioned in some of these stocks rather than the current quarter. Maybe if we get some hints out of their guidance and what they say in the earnings call about the future development of quantum chips and the uses, I think that will be important too. I don't know if they've started their conference call, but it has been consolidating here. It's been doing fine. It just hasn't been off to the races. I'm watching 29.40 to see if this could get above there and stay. And then also further to that level, just the highs from the other day. I think that was Friday too. So once again, the Friday high is coming into play here. That's right around 30.90. I see on the daily chart, which we are above there. Let's see if it can stick, because this is another name where sometimes it gets off running in the beginning of the day, and then it's a bit of a fader as the day goes on. So that's what I would be watching for INOQ and the group as a whole.
Earnings tonight, and there's a pile of them again. Like we've got like 150 companies reporting tonight, but just the highlights. Definitely a firm. Christian has actually positioned himself to be long ahead of that report. I kind of like that setup too, and thinking about doing the same thing, but I haven't made a final decision on that one yet. Rocket Labs reports, Cloudflare NET reports, Trade Desk, SoundHound, one blast on the past, DKNG reports, Lyft reports. There's a pile of reports here. So it's going to be another big night. Pinterest, Expedia, AUR, which is a Mark Chaikin pick, that reports here tonight too. So pile of reports here tonight. We are still got in the heart of earnings season here. Guest tomorrow, Tony Pollock, coming on from Real Life Trading. He'll be talking some options with us. So that's your show for today, folks. Thanks for sticking around with us, and we'll see you over in the SDN room.